Any question can be asked at this point. The whole team from Search Lab is here to answer any questions that you've got. But if you had anything in particular for the team here at the front, now would be a good time to ask. So did anybody have any questions for the team at the front around the kind of on-site considerations or the content and online PR? Yeah, sure. At the back.
There's a question for Jamie. The hreflang tags. Before I've seen that you could put that in the XML sitemap. Is that still the case, or does it need to be on the page?
Yeah, so anyone who didn't hear, it was a question whether we could put the hreflang tag in the XML sitemap, which is basically a file that lists all the web pages on the site. And yes, that's correct. So the hreflang tag typically would be included in the source code, but you can specify in the XML sitemap as well, which, depending on how your site is structured and how easy it is to implement it in the sitemap, it varies as to the approach that people take. But yes, that's totally fine. Google would read and understand that correctly, yeah.
Question for Jamie again. You talked about CCTLDs. What are your thoughts about the new CCTLDs that have come up, like dot photography, dot based, dot professional notes, other CCTLDs?
Yeah, so the question then was around some of the newest CCTLDs that have come up. You can pretty much get anything now. With regards to the country-specific ones, so the ones that I ran through in the presentation, those can have a real bearing in terms of ranking performance in that specific market. I think any others are probably more of a vanity thing rather than having real SEO benefit. So one of the questions actually that was submitted before the session, so it might be a good time to address that, was around maybe using the .london domain in London and whether that would have any kind of ranking benefit. To be honest, probably not. It wouldn't have any kind of greater benefit over anyone who was using .co.uk or .com, but it can have a bit of a vanity thing for a company. If they want to set up a specific London branch and a London domain, by all means do so, but it wouldn't have any greater benefit than if they were to use any other kind of country or top-level domain.
And same applies to .eu?
So .eu is a tricky one because obviously of the things that I ran through with EU targeting. Again, it wouldn't have any kind of real benefit if you were to target your .eu website in UK or France or Germany. It wouldn't have any real benefit if you were to do that compared to if you were to do any other kind of generic domain. The only ones that offer the real benefit are the country-specific ones because Google recognises the code and that is associated with a country. Okay.
Okay.
Jamie.
Popular Jamie.
You mentioned about country-based subfolders. And as you may know, for Thinking Traveller, we've got language-based subfolders.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any advantage to either using language or country?
So anyone who didn't hear that was whether we should use any advantage over using a language code subfolder as opposed to a country subfolder or vice versa. Again, not really. What you actually put after the subfolder doesn't really mean much to Google. So if you used /FR or /France, that there's no difference between the two of those. So similarly, if you were to use /UK or /EN, no real difference. Getting the hreflang tags is the crucial part, and also the geo-targeting feature in Google Search Console is the crucial part to really give that location signal. But no, what actually comes after that / in your domain, it could be anything as long as you set up all the correct targeting elsewhere.
It doesn't matter if you've got, say, /FR, but you're targeting Switzerland, France?
No, that again would be fine, as long as you don't have it targeted in Webmaster Tool, in Search Console as France, because then you're really, really limiting your focus. But again, you could have anything after there. You could have /Jamie and target it for France, and maybe not the best approach to take, as flat as I would be, but yeah, hopefully that answers that.
Okay, the question there at the back.
One more again. With Chinese, compared to traditional Chinese, simplified Chinese, is there any difference with the codes?
Yes, there is. I don't know them off the top of my head, but there is a difference. There is a different code, yeah. And there's also a different code for Hong Kong as well. So if you're thinking about China and possibly Hong Kong, obviously a strong association there, there's different codes for those two. One of them, I think, is ZH. Right, there you go. Maybe you should ask that again. But yeah, there are differences there, so it's certainly one to think about. And I suppose whilst we're on that, Hong Kong is one market that we have worked in, and Google is really, really prominent and is the most popular search engine in Hong Kong, whereas in China it's obviously some of the search engines that Pete ran through in his slides. So small differences in terms of location, but kind of big differences in terms of your campaigns.
Okay, did anyone else have any other questions? Yeah?
I was asking for a non-Jamie question.
Okay.
A question for Jamie.
All right.
You mentioned on the IP address lookup. So I know we're using the geo IP. Is there any kind of compromise with Google, or would you say absolutely just somewhere around?
I'd definitely steer away from any kind of IP redirection or IP lookup. It's not a hard and fast rule that Google will never be able to crawl your website. We've seen some instances where it will, but typically Google conducts the majority of its crawls from the USA. So if you're redirecting any user or any robot, any traffic to your website based on IP, they're going to immediately go to the USA site, Googlebot. So it's a typical rule, but we have seen instances where the website would be indexed anyway, but it's something we definitely steer away from, yeah. You can use, there's tools that you could download that you can sort of choose your location, and basically it will mask your IP, and it could plonk you in a completely different country, basically virtually. So you could access your website and see what happens in real time in the browser as to whether you're actually redirected. That's probably the best way of going about it. There's Chrome plugins that will do that for free. I'm not sure how reliable they are. If you've got a seriously built out website where you're using this approach, I'd recommend investing in some sort of VPN software that can basically mask your IP and put you in a different country, and it will completely change your browsing experience, yeah.
Good. Yeah, so a question.
I was just going to, it's a point actually about
Yeah.
the IP thing. It's really frustrating if someone has their website set so that, say, if you're on a French IP, you get served a French address, because I've seen it with clothing retailers. You're in France, but you're an English person or you're not a native French speaker. You can't necessarily assume that just because you're in France, you're going to be only seeing that site in French, and often you can't get around that to get to the English site because it's via your IP. So
Yeah.
it's just a rubbish way of doing it.
Yeah, pretty much summed up there.
Did anybody else have any questions either for the group here or for the other speakers? Yeah.
Is one more final one on the technical side of things.
It's a good job I came today.
I was just curious whether it makes you change the way you implement any of your other technical pieces, such as you've already got something schema related, as an example, already applicable and showing up in your Google search. So if you create whichever one of the three different methods that you went through earlier, then do you have to change the way that you implement that schema, or will it automatically show up?
So that was a question around schema markup and marking up certain data and having that pulled through into search results. Probably not, because that's implemented at sort of page level, code level, and content level. So as long as if you were to restructure your website and move it onto a different domain or a different subfolder, as long as you copy that content and the code across, as soon as Google recrawls that code, it should pull that through. The problem with schema and rich snippet markup, it's not 100% guaranteed, as you might have noticed sometimes. So don't be surprised if it potentially does drop out, but it should reappear as Google starts to pull together all the signals of your old piece of content, your old URLs, and the fact that they're most likely now redirecting into new URLs. So yeah, it wouldn't be too much of a concern for me, really, if that was an approach you wanted to take.
Okay, any more questions for Jamie? If anyone's got any other questions for anybody else that spoke this morning, or for the rest of the panel that are here at the front? No? Okay, well, we did have some other questions that came through before, a couple of which we thought might be worth picking up. One of the questions related to click-through rate and conversion rate on international campaigns versus UK campaigns. And Pete, I wondered if you'd sort of had anything that you'd noticed from experience of running international paid campaigns that that you could answer that question.
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, I'd say absolutely there will be differences in different countries. Some people are far more comfortable using the paid search listings. Some people see them as a bit spammy, and there's a lot of very cultural differences there. Especially with display advertising as well, you can see click-through rates vary in different countries, anything from sort of 0.05% right up to about 2 or 3%. So yeah, definitely big differences in the way that people interpret adverts and sort of typical behavior on websites and everything like that. So yeah, I'd say absolutely anticipate differences. There are some tools such as Consumer Barometer that I mentioned earlier, which can help you to understand some of these trends before entering a particular territory as well. So yeah, definitely do expect differences. In terms of exactly what those differences would be, it's going to vary from industry to industry, from country to country. So there's probably no hard and fast rules, but yeah, don't expect it to be the same everywhere.
Okay, thanks, Pete. One of the other questions as well that we had sent to us earlier was about the value of social media mentions and engagement when driving SEO growth. And I thought maybe like Freya, it might be a good question for you to. Good topic for you to talk about.
Yeah, so it's that old question, isn't it? If social is actually that important for rankings, and it's still a debate, to be honest. There is a couple of reports that will have seen improved rankings from social, but it's not being directly associated just with social, so it could have had other reasons. So really what I always say is, no matter what country really, if you use Google, and if the question is about Google, it doesn't necessarily help you with your rankings, but it will help you with your growth from organic. So more engagement and more likes and more tweets and more shares might not shoot you to page 1 or position 1, but it will help you with your brand, your visibility. People might still click through to your site and convert. So all of that, you still want that from your organic or from social media. So it helps you for SEO, but it might not directly impact on your rankings. Something though that is important to say is trending tweets about certain topic areas are being pulled through to page 1, just like a news feed or trending images. So you know, if you have got something trending or something that's going viral for a certain keyword on Twitter, that might be shown on page 1 when otherwise your company wouldn't be shown on page 1. So yeah, it is important.
Okay. Yep, a question
I
from
was just
the
going to
floor.
say, how much of a thing is localizing social media? As in, if you're a UK company but you're going into France and Germany, would you recommend to completely separate off and have a French Facebook page and a French Twitter feed?
Never mind. Yeah. So the question was, how much do you need to localize social media when you're planning to go international? My answer would be, you should definitely try and localize it as much as you can. There are some ways where you can, for example, on Facebook, send messages only specific to certain markets, so only your French readers might be getting it. However, it's just not the best user experience, so I would always think about you really want them to experience your brand in the best way possible, and I think you really just feel a part of it if they kind of talk to you personally in your own language and have your own channel.
Just to add to that as well, the example I gave earlier about the hair growth product, and it's a little capsule, and you know you take it, you swallow it. A picture of that wouldn't be appealing on social media when you send it out in the French market, but it might work in the German market. So again, little things like that, if you know, need to be localized really to have that appeal and click through that you want from social.
Okay, any final questions from anyone before we wrap up? No? Okay, I guess that just sort of leaves me to say thank you all for giving up your valuable time and joining us this morning. I hope that you've all been able to find something that's useful that you can take away and apply in your international projects. Thank you very much. And actually one thing I should say as well, our white paper is available to everybody on the way out. And I know that a couple of people asked earlier in the break about the content and the slides. The slides will be made available to you all as well afterwards. Thanks, everyone.